So you basically put a halter on a cow and you attach a nose piece to it. And fun fact, most of the gas comes from their nose, not their mouth. So you capture all the gas from their nose. It goes to what I call the backpack. The gas goes back to the backpack. When the cow comes in to get milk, a laborman's going to hook up to the udders to milk the cow. It's just one extra step. Hook up to our system, sucks out the gas, and then that goes to some on-site infrastructure that will upgrade it to a pipeline quality.
Hardware to Save a Planet explores the technical innovations that are giving us hope in the fight against climate change. Each episode focuses on a specific climate challenge and explores an emerging physical technology solution with the person bringing it into reality. I'm your host, Dylan Garrett. Hardware to Save a Planet is brought to you by Synapse. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to Hardware to Save a Planet. I'm very excited to be here with Griffin Cherry today, the founder and CEO of Planet.Tech, joining us actually from the San Francisco area, but normally based in Austin, Texas. Griffin and his team are tackling methane emissions from cow burps. I've heard about methane capture through dairy digesters, which capture the emissions from large manure ponds. I also did an episode with Josh Silverman from Windfall Bio a while back, who was reducing methane emissions from manure. But I just learned in prepping for this episode that cow burps account for something like 90% of all methane emissions from cattle. And like we've talked about, methane is 80 times more powerful at trapping heat than CO2 over a 20-year period. Griffin, you'll have to check me on all of this, but this is my best understanding now. So what I'm really curious about, though, is how you're doing this. I hope we get into that a bit. Just to introduce Griffin quickly, he took what sounds like a really fun path to climate tech, including sailing, culinary school, and roofing sales before founding Planet.Tech. So I'm excited to hear a bit about that journey too. Griffin, thanks a lot for joining. It's great to have you.
I am so excited to be here. This is one of my favorite climate podcasts, and now I'm on it. So this is great.
Awesome. So I really want to get your origin story. Your LinkedIn profile says at 14, you read a quote from Dan Brown that said, "Nothing is impossible. The impossible just takes longer." I thought that would be, and it sounds like that was sort of a pivotal moment for you. I thought maybe we could start there and just kind of hear about your journey.
Yeah, my journey is definitely an atypical, and when VCs are like, "Oh yeah, we like to invest in founders that have like founders that would not typically be founders," I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's my investor right there." Because
perfect.
Yeah, I've never been to college. My highest education is culinary school. But the start to finish story on the short basis is I started working at 16 as a mechanic, and realized that was kind of a dead end job. So I got into building airplanes. My dad worked at Boeing, and so I was like, "Hey, let's try that." COVID happened and Boeing was hemorrhaging money. So like, "Hey, let's lay off 7,000 people." I was one of those people. At the time, I was watching videos on sailing and specifically people sailing around the world. And I was like, that sounds like such a fun life. Let's do that. So I moved to Hawaii, took a one-way trip, and started immersing myself in the boat culture because I realized, hey, if I'm going to sail around the world, and even if there's other people on the boat, like if the mast snaps in half, I don't want to die. So let's figure out how to not die in the middle of the ocean, right? So I dove in and created an environment that spurred information in boating. So I did 4 things at once. I built my own small business doing boat repair and cleaning. I built and repaired sails for sailboats. I earned captain hours working on a booze cruise where I also started a photography program. So I was basically like, how do I absorb as much information about boating as possible while also building up the coffers to actually go sail around the world? Now, the missing piece from that and why I'm not on a boat in the middle of the ocean right now is because it's really hard to make money in Hawaii. So my brother called me up. He's like, "Hey, you're miserable. You're working way too much. You're not making any money. You should move to Austin." And this was 2021, peak migration to Austin, where it was like, Austin's the coolest place to be, right? So I moved to Austin and got into restaurants out of necessity. I didn't have any money at all. I didn't have a car, nothing. So I just walked next door and started washing crawfish, like 300 pounds of crawfish a day, at a crawfish place, and fell in love with restaurants. I got into the front of house, started as a host and then a server. Quickly realized I'm really good at selling stuff. Like I was number one or number two in sales always at every restaurant I worked at. And I said, okay, I have always wanted to start a business. Let's try restaurants. So I went to culinary school to de-risk that. Realized restaurants don't make money, and I wasted a bunch of money on student loans that I didn't need to. So figured that out. And said, okay, wow, sales. I'm good at the selling thing. Let's try that out. So I got into door-to-door sales, started with solar, and then got into roofing and quickly rose to the top 2% of the nation for door-to-door roofing sales. And then I started my company. So that's the origin story.
And then roofing to Cow Burps.
It was technically roofing at first when I started the company, but then we pivoted to Cow Burps, yes.
Oh, that's a good pivot. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so 25% of most landfills are made of roofing shingles, especially in the South where we do our roof every 2 years because of hailstorms, right? And I was like, that's ridiculous. They're actually recyclable. We know how to recycle them. And I realized, well, we first figured out that we can put asphalt roofing aggregate, so asphalt shingles, into roads, and then they all started cracking. They're like, oh crap! So we can only do 1 to 3% of that shingle in roads. Now there's way more roofs being done than roads being built, and so it's a market problem. There's not enough demand for the end supply, and I was like, you don't solve a market problem with 50K, so let's try something else. And then I saw a notification pop up on my phone that said cows are the cause of climate change. And I was like, holy crap. Like that's the same exact story that I heard when I was in elementary school 13 years ago. Why is it the same story? Why is the problem still here? What's going on here? I then did 700 hours of research over the course of 3 months and realized like this is the largest untapped source of clean fuel feedstocks on the planet and nobody's capturing it. And so now we're the only company on the planet that captures enteric emissions.
Okay. I want to get into that. I'm curious. It seems like you have such a strong kind of entrepreneurial drive. Do you have a feel for where that comes from? Is it, you said your dad worked for Boeing, I think, is it in your family or where does that come from?
So I'd say it maybe skipped a generation. In terms of like my grandfather, he was the co-founder or one of the really high up execs at CPCSD, which is one of the largest cotton producers in the world. If my dad did not leave the Central Valley, California, I would have been an 8th generation farmer, which I didn't know until like 8 months into my agriculture climate journey, which was like, the land called me back. I'm back in the valley. It's crazy.
It's in your genes.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually asked myself this question a lot. I think it goes back to chronically growing up, watching Shark Tank and other entrepreneurial driven shows and knowing the outcome of the pitch or knowing the outcome of whatever that story was before even we were even 10 minutes into whatever the pitch or the show was. And I was like, why do I know this? Like, why am I good at this? And going through, it was really roofing that unlocked this, holy crap, I'm really good at business. Because as a server or as a normal W-2 kind of low-level employee and all the other jobs I had, you don't really get to touch the business side too much. But once I was the top person in the roofing company I worked at, I was like seeing how things could be improved, how we could be more effective, and actually implemented a lot of systems and ideas that I had that improved the company. And I was like, everything lined into place. I think there's 4 things you need to start a company. You need the skills to actually do it, the time to be able to execute on those skills, the capital to be able to back that up. And then the 4th thing is the roadmap or the vision of being able to take those 3 resources and actually make something out of it. And so the beginning of 2025 was the first time I had all 4 of those at once. I had the skills and the time for a long time, but I didn't have the capital or the vision. And that was unlocked. Yeah.
And I would add like I don't know, there's something less tangible like the spirit or the risk appetite or something like this, right?
I slightly disagree. I think that my thesis on what an entrepreneur is the only difference between normal people and entrepreneurs, because normal people, everyone has, oh my God, I have this idea. It could be $1 million idea. It could be $1 million business. Everybody has that. Nobody doesn't have any, at some point in their life, they come up with an idea and it could be $1 billion company. The only difference between normal people and entrepreneurs is relentless action. Because if you can take relentless action, even your risk appetite isn't really a factor. It is just action, 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 action. And you can overcome the risk appetite through action.
I like that. So, okay, so you zeroed in on cattle, something you'd heard about as a kid and what is still a problem. How did you get to cow burps specifically, looking at that whole problem? Because my understanding is there's a number of sources related to of emissions related to livestock, right?
Sure, yes. So what I was really looking for when I saw this, and I was like, okay, roofing ain't it, but then there's this cattle thing. I was looking around and like, what's the most tangible, lowest hanging fruit climate impact that can be solved? And thankfully, this notification came in at just the right time, and it was serendipity. But when looking at different climate problems, like you got the pie chart, and I know you've talked about it on a lot of other episodes, but you got energy, you got transportation, you got how we build things, you got agriculture, and then kind of some miscellaneous stuff. But agriculture is really overlooked. Nobody really looks at it because it's a really hard problem I mean, they're all hard problems to solve, but
right.
Agriculture, and you said it in the beginning of the episode, 90% comes from the burps. And the current way people look at the problem is through the lens of how do we re-engineer the cow to produce less methane?
Right. Yeah, like supplements in the feed and this kind of thing.
Exactly. Or vaccines, gut microbiome re-engineering. You got all kinds of different solutions that basically try to re-engineer the cow. And I think it's a very cool way to look at the problem, but I think it's inherently ineffective because you're messing with biology and it's usually a cost driver. And so when I looked at it, I was like, wait a second, if you were to put all the cows on the planet today, it's like somewhere around 11 billion MMBTUs of renewable natural gas potential. That's a lot of gas. And it's also carbon negative sources of methane. So interesting. Can we capture it? And we put a thing on a cow and we captured it. And it's like, okay, we're doing this. This is the thing.
Yeah. Okay, what thing did you put on a cow? That's what I really want to hear about.
Sure,
what is the thing?
I know it's burning for you. So we have a two-part system, right? We got the on-cow device, and then we also have some infrastructure on the farm that purifies the gas. The on-cow device, you have what we call a nose piece. So you basically put a halter on a cow and you attach a nose piece to it. And fun fact, most of the gas comes from their nose, not their mouth. So you capture all the gas from their nose. It goes to what I call the backpack. So you can imagine like a bareback pad on a horse. If you don't know what that is, look it up. A bareback pad on a horse, and then you mount the electronics, power systems, and the gas storage on that. The gas goes back to the backpack. When the cow comes in to get milked, a laborman's going to hook up to the udders to milk the cow. It's just one extra step. Hook up to our system, sucks out the gas, and then that goes to some on-site infrastructure that will upgrade it to a pipeline quality. And then that farmer can either sell it or use it on site. Eventually, we'll be able to provide things like sustainable aviation fuel or other types of renewable hydrocarbons that market would need.
Okay. And I want to hear about kind of the business side of it as well, but maybe just to focus on the thing a bit more. It sounds super cool. Maybe first, where are you in the development process? What kinds of prototyping have you done? Or
yeah, so we've had about 17 successful live tests on dairy cows, ranging from one cow for 3 minutes. That was our very, very first one. That was like oh my God, we captured cow burps, holy crap. To our latest test, which was our first pilot. It was our first 24-hour continuous wear. We found all the failure modes and where we need to iterate on some of the product to be more what we call cow proof. Again, we're deploying on a live 1,600-pound animal. So designing something that not only stays in place, but is also resilient and also, number one, absolutely no negative effect on the cow. I'd say it's as much of a design problem as an engineering problem. And that's not quite the case for most climate products, I would say. Like energy, it's a square panel that you put on someone's roof, or even biogas stuff. It doesn't need to look pretty. But for us, it needs to not only look pretty, but functionality, quality, and the engineering side have to all come together in a beautiful design of a product. So that's where we're at as our first pilot just completed.
Right. It's user oriented design, but in this case, at least one of the key users is a cow.
Exactly. Yeah. The user the user is a cow, but the customer is a farmer. Yeah.
So what does it mean? What are some of the big challenges of designing for a cow? What putting electronics on a cow in this environment there, and maybe just so I'm centered in the right thinking, is this primarily, or should I be thinking kind of big industrial feedlot operations, or cows out grazing in grass, or what's the mental image here?
It's a great question. We operate on both. And the reason why it is a wearable is because only 14% of global operations are intensive or concentrated operations, where they're like in a factory farm. And so we looked at this problem and said, well, if we want to actually tackle 14% of global emissions on a 20-year time period, that is only cow burps, then it needs to be a global product. And so we can't do it inside the barn, which also is not very effective. We need to do this on every single cow. So it needs to fit on every single cow. I forgot the first part of your question.
I wanted to understand, what kind of environment? So it sounds like it's cows out kind of grazing in the open, or maybe not grazing, but out in open air.
Yeah, it's both intensive and grazing. So we can
Right.
deploy on both farms that are 40,000 cows in a 2 square mile area, and also a couple hundred cows on thousands and thousands of acres. The only kind of limiting factor right now is dairy. So they come in twice a day predictably to get milked. That's when we have the window of opportunity to extract the gas that we've collected. Yeah.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be a regular opportunity to offload the gas.
Yeah, beef is definitely on the horizon. It's just a very, very it's going to be a lot more high tech, and it's a lot harder. So we're going with the lowest hanging fruit, which is dairy. So yeah, in the U.S. alone, there's about 9.4 million dairy cows out of 94 million. So about 10% is in the U.S. is dairy. Yeah.
Okay, a good place to start. And the other part of the question was, what are some of the challenges of designing for a cow in those environments? You're outside, you've got cows bumping into each other. What are we thinking about from a sort of a design and engineering challenges standpoint?
Exactly. So there's been wearables on cows since 2000. So it's not a new technology in terms of a wearable on a cow. What is new territory is the form factor. So we have two parts. We have a halter and the backpack. Bumping into each other, the parts of the device have to stay high up on the back so that they don't interfere with bumping in other cows. It also has to be in a place where when the cow mounts on another one, they're not crushing the device. Or if it does hit that it's rugged enough to not break, right? And then on the form factor, the nose piece, it needs to be what I call sleek and sexy, where because of its design and its form factor around their face, it's not going to get torn off. It's not going to get in the way of the cow. It actually moves out of the way when they want to eat and drink. So we don't interfere with that. But methane is an incredibly dispersive gas. And so something we learned real quick is like, okay, this can't just be like a dune mask where it's I think it's called a capillary or cannula, where it's just stuck in their nose because all the gas.
It's only capturing part of the airflow.
Yeah, when they breathe out, it's like really forceful, and so it would just go around the cannula. So it has to be more of like an actual nose piece than just something we stick in their nose.
Hmm.
I know way more about cows than I wish I knew.
Yeah, what has that process been like? Are you working closely with ranchers? Do you have a cow? How are you making this happen?
not, not yet. We don't. We joke all the time of like, okay, at what round can we have an office and then have like something in the back of the office in the parking lot or something where we lay down some hay and we have a cow. But no, exactly, we will at some point. But no, we have a farm partner that we've been working closely with for about a year now, who lights up every time we come around because he's like, all right, let's see if this one works better. And so yeah, so we have access to a small farm that is very collaborative with us, and we're on the farm. I was just at the Animal Ag Tech Innovation Summit in Fort Worth recently. There was a panel that said, "Hey, if you ask ag tech founders, if they've been on the farm or been with producers in the last year, it's something like 70% would say they haven't." I love saying that I go to the farm at least once a month. I'm there on the farm, getting knee deep in shit, like cow shit. But no, it's a fun process iterating on a live animal and seeing, okay, this specific strap material that we used versus this other one is actually a little bit more aggressive. So let's go back to the other one and then integrate that in our new designs. And the hardware process of iterating on a 1,600-pound animal is just so fun.
So that's a lot of the challenge of keeping the hardware alive. What about keeping the cow well and functioning and not impeding with their kind of day to day? I guess you talked about how it moves out of the way if they're eating and drinking. Are there other downsides of, I don't know, impeding the breath out of their nose or putting extra weight on their back or anything like that you have to think about?
Weight, not so much. No, they are sturdy animals. I won't talk too much on like the weight we're shooting for, but it's definitely not impeding them. In terms of how the cow behaves and behavior changes, my co-founder is really, really good at metaphors, and he very quickly was like, cows are a lot like 3-year-olds, right? A 3-year-old, you want to put a t-shirt on them, they're going to be like, no, I don't put a t-shirt on me. And then once it's on them, they're like, all right, let's go eat and play. Cows are exactly the same way. So they're about 5 minutes or so, they're like, what is this thing? And they're like, all right, cool, where's my food, where's my friends? So behaviorally they don't change much at all. What we're really excited to see is really deep data in our next pilot with our academic partners, showing qualitatively what are the negative effects that we see now that we can iterate through design, so that we can certify when we go to market with our farmers and also the general public. Hey, there's absolutely no negative effect on the cow. If anything, there's a positive effect. And we have quite a few different ideas of how can we create a positive experience for the cow. Because most of these cows that we're going to be
Say more about that.
So I can say one idea. I won't go to, because there's a bunch of ideas.
Okay.
But one idea is like tactile feelers in the halter that like massage their face. And we could actually time it with their eating. So they go down to eat and they massage their face. We could actually potentially induce a positive association with grazing to actually have higher dry matter intake, which is the big metric that farmers are looking for, especially beef, is how, like, are they eating to get weight gain? And also just kind of massage their face, give them a little massage.
Yeah, why not? Who doesn't want a face massage?
Exactly. Yeah. Cows, they love to rub their face if they're not, because they don't have hands, right? So either their buddies are coming around and licking their face, or their actual their neck or behind their ears. But if we can massage it, then that gives them that itch, so satisfies that itch pretty wholeheartedly.
First time developing hardware for you?
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of electronics kits and like Legos and lots of those early late 90s kids type of building stuff, but I've never actually developed a hardware product. But
yeah, what stands out as something kind of unexpected that you've learned about it, or advice you might have for somebody else heading down a new hardware development path?
I'd say the vast majority of people that build hardware overstate how hard it is. I think it's actually a lot easier than people say it is. Now let me kind of expand on that. A lot of people are like, they think it takes 10, 20, 30K, 100K, millions of dollars to develop hardware, when reality, like every part of our system is either 3D printed or bought off Amazon. Like I invested just under six figures myself over the course of over a year, and we got to tier L5. Like, it doesn't take much to build. Like, I'd say the exception is if you're like biotech, where you got to go through a huge FDA process, or fusion, where that's like, you're to build a unit, it's literally $20 million minimum. If you have an idea and you think there's a market for it, and you validated that market, and you can really take the true essence of an MVP, which is, okay, what's the really cheapest minimum thing I can build, and I could maybe sell it to someone. That's an MVP. I think a lot of people are like, okay, I got to build something that it doesn't break, it doesn't, like, there's no problems with it, there's no bugs. No, just build something that just barely works and the right person would buy it. That's an MVP. And then that can get you whatever funding you need, right? I think, yeah, that's the only piece of advice I get, is like, it's actually not as hard as you think it would be. And if anybody wants to contact me and say, hey, I got this idea, can you help me validate it? I would love to do that. It's a really fun thought experiment. Yeah. It's like, okay, we need a proper budget now. Yeah. Yeah. So the big value prop to the farmer, and I should actually touch should actually talk a little bit more about the problem. So the average American dairy farmer only makes about 1 penny per 11 gallons of milk they sell in profit. And that's only 2 out of the last 20 years they've actually turned a profit. So they are chronically unprofitable. They do not make money, and they are hurting, and their children don't want to keep going on the business because they see how hard the parents are working, and it's just not, it doesn't work, right? So when I went and spoke to farmers and said, hey, if I could give you $600 in new revenue per cow each year, would you want this? 85% of them signed an LOI on the spot. So they see anything that can materially change their economics. And I've posited this thesis to some of the largest names in agriculture, that dairy is dead. The future of dairy is just energy farms that happen to produce milk. And that is why we have a energy developer that signed an MOU that's like, okay, if you can get some farmers together, some groups together, then we're going to deploy solar on every farm that you put your system on. Because the economics of dairy is just so thin that if you can offset the cost or introduce new revenue streams, you got that farmer for life, right? And so this is taking a clean biogas and land that they have and turning it into an asset, a strategic asset for them. And it's also food security and energy security for the United States and the world. So business model is direct to the farmer. When the let's say a farmer wants to go buy a tractor, they'll probably get some sort of grant or some sort of incentive, and then some ag lending to go pay for that. We qualify for all those, and then they get it and reap the 100% of the economic benefits of that device. And then once we can bring our costs down as fast as we can, we will offer the entire thing at no cost to the farmer, and revenue share on the gas sales. That's phase 2 of the business model.
Do you get involved in the selling of the gas side of things with the farmers as well, or is that on them?
It's kind of dependent on whether the farmer could sell it or not is dependent on the location of the farm. If they're selling it and they are not already piped into the system, then we would assist. If they're already piped in, then they just use their existing infrastructure.
What do you mean piped into the system?
Yeah, so you mentioned windfall bio and anaerobic digestion. Those digesters, where does the gas go from there?
I see. They already have infrastructure where somebody's off taking the methane they're producing.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So if they're already there, hook up to that existing system.
Exactly.
If not, there's got to be some kind of logistics to capture it in tanks or something and truck it around, or to get them hooked up to some kind of infrastructure.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Is there a certain kind of scale of operation that kind of tips us into the scale where it makes sense, or could it be any dairy farmer?
Yeah, right now at our price point, the larger the better, and that's the same thing for digesters. Digesters, the larger, really any large farm already has digesters because it just makes sense. It would be stupid if they didn't do digesters because of the volume of manure that they're processing. They can create a lot of natural gas. So same thing for us. Also, the larger farms, they're run more as corporations than like a family dairy. So they have a farm manager, they have a dairy manager, because the farm isn't just dairy, right? They're also growing all of their own corn for silage, for feed for the cows. They're potentially also growing pistachios and almonds. If they're growing pistachios, then pistachios, they'll be using the shells of the pistachios for a feed supplement. And so there's usually a farm manager that's managing all of that stuff, and then a dairy manager that manages the dairy, and then there's a health manager. Anyway, getting way too into the logistics of farm management. But so they, because of their scale, their economies of scale, they usually have a bit more cash to play with. So those are our first customers. And then later on, once we get to bringing our costs down, we can help out some of the smaller family farms. 100%, that's still part of the goal.
And if I understand the numbers right, if they're currently using manure, like one of these anaerobic digester systems to capture the emissions off of manure, if they could then capture it directly from cow burps, we're talking about what, like 8 or 9 times the amount of emissions that they're getting from manure. Is that the right way to think about it?
If you were looking at that number alone, yes. The only variable that's missing from that equation is anaerobic digesters can actually optimize the amount of methane that's being produced because it's an anaerobic system. And so if traditionally it was just off-gassing maybe 1 MMBTU, I don't know the actual number if it's uncovered, but let's say it's 1, and then they cover it, and then they can actually play around with that soup of bacteria. They can get 10, 20 MMBTUs. Yeah. So if it was just the digester alone, yes, you would be right. But since they can optimize it, it is actually a bit more than what we produce. But on the emissions perspective, if digesters were not there at all, we would be capturing 8 or 9 times more.
Yes. The emissions reduction potential relative to doing nothing is a lot higher.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the revenue potential for the farmer is at maybe a similar scale. A little sounds like a bit less than the digesters.
Yeah, a little bit less, but it is basically doubling the amount of revenue they're getting, and it's super high margin revenue for them versus the milk sales where it's 1 to 3% sometimes.
And
Yeah.
when I was first thinking about this, I thought, oh,
Yeah.
you must run into kind of, I don't know, resistance from a traditional mindset in this community, but it sounds like that's not really the case. The customers are pretty stoked.
You would think so. I think it's what I call the rancher's paradox, where whether it's dairy or beef or anyone that has land, rural land, the rancher's paradox is, okay, I have this land. I need to turn it into money somehow. So let's put cows on top that can eat the grass, and then I sell it for beef or dairy or whatever. Let's use the minerals down below, whether it's mining or oil and gas or geothermal. There's wind above me. Okay, let's put a windmill there. Oh, there's solar. Cool, let's put solar. Right. That's the rancher's paradox. So I think there's a really big stigma that farmers are terrible people to sell to just because the adoption rate is lower. I think it's purely because there hasn't been any solutions that are truly disruptive to agriculture, and that's why there hasn't really been any exits, right? Over the last 5 years, 17% year over year, we've seen a decrease in venture capital because the largest exits have been around 300 million. And my thesis there is where Airbnb truly disrupted an antiquated industry, there has not truly been a solution yet to actually disrupt agriculture on the level where you can actually create an enduring company. That's where we think we're a bit different.
What are the kind of market sizing numbers for the gas production potential?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because I think as I talk about this, someone would be like, "Oh, this is an ag tech company." Well, no, we're not. We just deploy on cows. We're an energy company. So we've energy company market sizing. So if you take our bottoms up approach of our price times the amount of cows there are, it's a total addressable market globally of about $5.2 trillion. If you look at United States alone, it's about a quarter of a trillion, so 250 billion.
Yeah.
And then on our beachhead market is $5.5 billion alone.
In the dairy,
so it's a really big market.
U.S. dairy farms.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just California dairy.
Just
alone.
California dairy.
Just one state. Yep.
And I suppose it's sustainably sourced, so there's a premium on this methane relative to conventional methane. Yeah.
So our assumptions actually account for a little bit lower price per MMBTU than digester methane. Digester methane can get up to like $156 per MMBTU, whereas spot price of just normal natural gas, you're looking at like $3, $5 per MMBTU. And that's because the CI score, the carbon intensity score, is so negative. It's the most carbon offsetted product in the world, dairy methane, because you're avoiding the methane from going into the atmosphere, and then you're turning it into a product that's actually, if it was burned, it would just be CO2. So if you can get your manufacturing process, your whole life cycle assessment process to be very sustainable, then it is a very high value commodity.
Super cool. As you scale the business, we talked about some of the challenges and that you got to overcome on the engineering side. What are the things that keep you up at night on the business side? What are some of the big risks or big kind of milestones you still have to get over?
I think touching on what I just talked about a second ago on the VC capital, I think access to capital is one of the big things that keep me up at night, because the growth rate that we're looking at and the speed at which we're going to grow, and I've spoken to a few financial people of like, could we actually do this? It's like, it'd be really, really, really hard, because we want to raise a good amount of money, right? So I think access to capital, and then the challenges of scaling and manufacturing a low cost, lightweight, effective wearable on a cow is going to be such a fun process to go through.
Absolutely.
I call myself a problem engineer, and all of the problems that are going to come up from that is like I don't it doesn't really keep me up at night, but it's very, very, very exciting to think about. Like, oh, okay, well, how can we do this?
Wait, sorry. What
Anyway,
is it?
yeah,
What is a problem
it's fun.
engineer? Do you create problems? What does a problem engineer do?
No, yeah, maybe a solution engineer would be better. No, I create solutions to
Gotcha.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. As you think about what's your vision for the company? Where do you want to what do you want to become? What's kind of the long-term goal?
Yeah, so this is my favorite thing to talk about. The reason why we're called Planet.Tech is we purely solely exist to build technology that solves planetary scale problems, usually where people are not looking, so that all future generations have a cleaner and better planet. And so I see this as a 500-year company. This is, if you look at the landscape of companies that the greatest minds could be like, oh, I want to go work for that mission. You got, okay, how do we engineer people's attention more so that they become slaves? Meta. We have a company where you could come up with an amazing idea and it probably won't see the light of day. Google. We have a company that is traditionally super mission driven and has a really big why, but is turning much more corporate. Apple. And then basically it's like, okay, what's left? Well, I could go work for Elon and waste my life away working 14 hours a day, which I love Elon companies. Don't get me wrong, I like all the companies I just mentioned. But like when you take an outside perspective and you put your head in the shoes of someone that is like an A player, there's not very many options of mission-driven companies where they could go put their life's work in. And so my vision for the rest of my life and my vision for Planet.Tech is building a vehicle for people to systematically build planetary scale technologies to create the utopia we all talk about of bringing asteroids back to the planet, of colonizing Mars, of becoming a multiplanetary species, of creating systems and products that are so valuable for the end customer that it is stupid for that customer to say no to. That's Planet.Tech. That's the long-term vision.
Love it. That explains the name that isn't specific to cow burps or asphalt, I guess. Asphalt shingles. Yeah. What I guess step one, solve the methane emissions from cattle. When do you start to
lowest hanging lowest hanging actually solvable climate problem? Cow burps. Let's solve 14% of global emissions first, and then we can move on to something else. Yeah.
What kind of time frame does that happen on, you think?
Yeah, it's looking at the validation path. Like we could ship our product now. We've hit the viability milestones for capture efficiency. We do have the cow proof problem to continue to iterate on, but we could probably ship soon, right? But shipping a product where farmers can 100% wholeheartedly get behind and say that's not going to harm a cow and it's actually going to make me money, and taking that farmer adoption equation, and like if it's great product times validation equals farmer adoption, then it's probably like 2 to 3 years out. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm ready to move on to the last few questions that I ask everybody, unless you had anything else you wanted to hit that we haven't done.
I think the last thing I'll say is in line with the vision of our company. If you feel like, oh my God, I just want to put my life's work into solving a new category of technology that is planetary scale problems, hit me up. I'd love to chat with you.
Nice. We'll put your people can find you pretty easily, I think. But we can put your socials on the show notes.
Sounds great.
Okay. 3 questions that I ask everybody. Sounds like maybe you've heard these. The first is, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about the future of the planet and why?
future of the planet or the future of humanity?
This is a great question. And
Those
if I
are-
could rewind
those are two different things.
and craft my questions again, I would probably say that, because I think the planet's probably not, the planet's going to be okay. Future of
there's a great movie, and it might be in theaters right now still, or maybe by the time this comes out it won't be, but there's a really good movie called The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist, and that's what I subscribe to. I'm an apocalyptimist. It's threading the line between the two simultaneous realities we hold, where it's mass extinction or utopia. It's like right in the middle. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who's another company or individual doing something to address climate change that's inspiring you?
Yeah, one of my buddies, his name's Chris Saunders. He's the founder of Power 48. He has built the world's first module, a battery module that can charge in 10 minutes, 0 to 100% in 10 minutes. And I think it's
at kind of like EV scale, or
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he cool. he really, really cool guy. Inspires me a lot.
Yeah. Might have to get him on the pod.
Yeah. I'll get you his info.
Cool. What advice do you have for someone not working in climate today who wants to do something to help?
I was waiting for you to ask this question. I think I'm a perfect example of, like, you don't have to have gone to school for environmental sciences or mechanical engineering or really anything at all. At the end of the day, the reason why I started this company specifically is because I truly believe it is Gen Z's moral obligation to pick up the proverbial climate can that my parents and my parents' parents have been kicking down the road and just actually, for lack of a better term, unfuck our planet, right? It is our moral imperative, because we're the last chance. We're the last line of defense. Gen Z is the last generation to have a planet for us to theoretically thrive on, unless we take relentless action. And so if you think about, like, if you're listening to this episode right now and you're like, hey, I like climate, it sounds interesting, I have no idea where to start. Just listen to the rest of the episodes in this show, and you'll find a place.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, like you said, you've set a really good example of that. Cool. Griffin, this was super fun. I've learned a lot, and I'm very excited to see cows out in the world with your tech on them. Thanks for everything you're doing. Thanks for your time.
100%. Thank you so much, Dylan, for having me on the show.
Hardware to Save a Planet is brought to you by Synapse. To find out more about us and how we develop hardware solutions for the world's most ambitious companies, head to synapse.com. And then make sure to search for Hardware to Save a Planet in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to listen. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Synapse, thanks for listening.